There's a specific kind of silence that comes after your whole world falls apart. Not the peaceful kind, not the quiet Sunday morning kind where you can hear birds outside and smell coffee brewing. This is the kind of silence that rings, the kind that sits in your chest like a stone you can't cough up. I know that silence now. I know it better than I ever wanted to. I'm not the kind of man who tells his business to strangers. I was raised that way. Keep it in the house. Handle your problems quietly. My father was like that. His father was like that before him. Men in my family didn't sit around talking about their feelings. We worked. We provided. We kept our heads down and our mouths shut. But this, what happened to me, it changed something in me. And if me sharing it helps even one person out there recognize what I missed, then it's worth every word. My name doesn't matter. What matters is this: I was a good husband. I know everybody says that. I know every man whose wife ever cheated on him says that. But I'm not saying it to make myself look good. I'm saying it because for the longest time, it was the thing that made the least sense to me. I was present. I was faithful. I was trying. And somehow that still wasn't enough. Or maybe it had nothing to do with enough. Maybe I was just too trusting. Maybe I saw what I wanted to see for far too long. Let me take you back. Her name is Diane. I met her at a work happy hour in the fall of 2009. She was standing near the bar talking to her coworker, laughing at something, and when she laughed, she threw her head back just a little, like she meant it, like she wasn't performing for anyone. I remember thinking, that woman is real. Whatever she is genuinely herself. I was drawn to that more than anything else about her. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. Got married in June of 2012 on a Saturday afternoon in her hometown in Ohio. Her grandmother was there, her 2 sisters. My whole family drove in from Tennessee. It was exactly the kind of wedding neither of us wanted. Too many people, too much noise, but we did it for the families and I don't regret it. Not that day. That day was good. We settled in Charlotte, North Carolina. I worked in logistics management. Diane was in pharmaceutical sales, which meant she traveled. Not every week, but often enough. A few days here, a week there. I never thought anything of it. That was her career. That was who she was when I met her. I wasn't going to be the kind of husband who made her feel guilty for having ambition. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood in 2015. 2 stories, a big backyard, a kitchen. She fell in love with the moment she walked in. We had our first son, Mason, in 2016, our second, Noah, in 2018. And for a while, a good long while, life felt like exactly what I'd always hoped it would be. I want you to understand what normal looked like, because what came later is so much sharper against that backdrop. Normal was Mason's baseball games on Saturday mornings. Normal was Noah's obsession with dinosaurs and the 30 plastic ones lined up on his bedroom windowsill. Normal was Diane making her mother's chili recipe on the first cold weekend of every fall. Normal was the 2 of us sitting on the back porch after the boys went to bed, not even necessarily talking, just being there together. That kind of easy, unhurried quiet that you only get with someone you've spent years learning. I loved my wife. I want to be clear about that. I loved her the way you love someone who has become part of your own heartbeat without even thinking about it anymore. The way you love breathing. The first thing I noticed, and I didn't even register it as a thing at the time, was her phone. Diane had always been pretty casual about her phone. She'd leave it on the kitchen counter. She'd hand it to me to look something up. She'd fall asleep with it face up on the nightstand and never think twice about it. She wasn't secretive, or at least she hadn't been. Sometime in early 2023, I want to say February or March, I noticed she started keeping it closer. It was subtle, like face down on tables, or taken into the bathroom when before she never used to do that, or just always within arm's reach in a way that felt slightly different from before. Not dramatic, just different. I didn't think my wife is cheating. I thought maybe she's planning a surprise. Maybe something's going on at work. Maybe she's dealing with something she's not ready to talk about yet. I gave it every innocent explanation in the book, because that's what you do when you trust someone. You explain away the thing your gut is noticing because your heart isn't ready to believe what your gut is saying. A few weeks after I started noticing the phone thing, she started sleeping differently. Diane had always been a sound sleeper. The woman could fall asleep in 15 minutes flat, head on the pillow, out like a light. It was one of the things I envied about her. I've always been a light sleeper, always had to wind down slowly. But her, she could be out before I even finished brushing my teeth. That changed. She started staying up later. I'd wake up at midnight or 1 in the morning and feel the bed and she'd be gone. I'd find her downstairs on the couch sometimes, or in the kitchen. She said she couldn't sleep, said it was stress from work, a new product launch, a difficult regional manager. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But she was also, and I don't know how to describe this exactly, slightly elsewhere. Like she was physically present, but some part of her mind had moved somewhere I couldn't follow. She'd laugh at the boys' jokes, but it would take her a half-second longer to catch them. She'd sit at dinner and her eyes would drift to some middle distance. I'd say her name and sometimes I'd have to say it twice. I mentioned it once. I said, "Hey, you seem far away lately. Is everything okay?" She looked at me and smiled, and it was a good smile, a convincing smile. She said, "I'm just exhausted. I think this quarter's going to kill me." And she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I let it go. I hate that I let it go. There were other things, small things. Looking back now, they stack up in a way that makes me feel stupid for not seeing the shape of it sooner. She started going to the gym earlier than usual. She bought new perfume and didn't mention it. She suggested she and her friend Carla take a girls' weekend to Savannah, which wasn't unusual. They'd done it before, but something about how quickly she moved to book it felt off. Like she needed the plans confirmed before I had too much time to think about them. She started laughing at her phone when she was alone. I caught her twice, once in the laundry room and once sitting in her car in the driveway after work, just sitting there, not coming inside, laughing at something on her screen. When she came in, both times she was slightly flushed. Both times she said she'd been texting with Carla. I want to tell you that in that moment I knew that I had some great instinct that fired off in me like an alarm. But honestly, I just felt a low hum of unease that I kept turning down. I wasn't ready. Looking back, I think part of me understood that if I pulled that thread, I couldn't unknow what I found, so I kept not pulling it. The night everything changed was a Tuesday in September. I had to be up early the next morning for a 6 a.m. conference call with a distribution partner in Dallas. I went to bed around 9:30. Diane said she'd be up in a few minutes. She was just finishing a glass of wine and watching something. Normal, fine. I woke up at and I checked my phone too, 17 in the morning. The bedroom was empty. Diane's side of the bed was cold, which told me she hadn't come up at all. I could hear something, just barely, from down the hall past the boys' rooms toward the little sitting area we had at the end of the hallway hallway near the window. Her voice, low hushed, the kind of low you use when you absolutely cannot be heard. I lay there for a second, just listening. I could hear the shape of her voice but not the words. The cadence of it was wrong. It wasn't her normal conversational rhythm. It was softer, more careful. There was something intimate in it that hit me like cold water before I even heard a single word. I got up slowly, not rushing. My heart was beating strangely slow and hard, like each beat was taking extra effort. I walked to the bedroom door and opened it without turning on any lights. I stood in the hallway, and then I heard her say it. I know I miss you too. I think about you all day. I can't keep doing this pretending. There was a pause. I know, but the boys. Another pause. I love you too. I stood there in the dark hallway of my own house and heard my wife tell another man she loved him. I don't have the language for what that feels like. I've tried to find it since. I've talked about it with my brother. I've written it down. I still don't have it. The closest I can get is this. It felt like the floor disappeared. Like I was standing on something I had been standing on for 12 years and it simply wasn't there anymore. Not anger, not yet. Just the vertigo of realizing the ground you trusted with your whole weight was never solid. I walked back to the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. I sat there for a long time. She came back to bed around 3. I lay there pretending to be asleep. I felt her settle in beside me. I could smell the faint traces of her perfume. I listened to her breathing slow as she fell asleep, the woman who had just told another man she loved him, and I stared at the ceiling until my alarm went off at 5:45. I went to that Dallas call. I took notes. I don't remember a single word that was said. I want to tell you what the next few days were like because I think people don't talk all about what happens between the discovery and the confrontation. People think it's immediate. In movies, it's always immediate. You hear the thing, you confront the person scene, but real life doesn't work that way, at least not for me. I didn't say anything for 4 days. 4 days of sitting across from her at the dinner table. 4 days of tucking the boys in and coming back downstairs and watching television next to her on the couch like nothing had changed. 4 days of watching her text and knowing. 4 days of lying next to her at night and feeling like I was sharing a bed with a stranger who wore my wife's face. It was the most surreal experience of my life. I was functioning. I was doing everything I was supposed to do, but I felt completely disconnected from myself, like I was watching myself from somewhere slightly above and behind my own body. During those 4 days, I did one thing I'm not proud of. I looked at her phone. I want to say I agonized over it, but honestly, by that point, it felt like the only honest thing in the room. She was lying to my face every hour, sitting across from me, smiling. I needed to know what was real. She had a passcode, but I knew it. We'd shared codes for years, one of those small intimacies of marriage that you don't even think about. His name was Travis. He wasn't a stranger. He was a pharmaceutical rep she'd met at a conference. I'm not sure when it started, but from the messages, I could piece together at least 8 months. 8 months. Mason's entire baseball season. Noah's whole second grade year. 8 months of I love yous and I wish you were here's and I can't stop thinking about you. 8 months of her lying in the bed next to me and holding a whole other life in her phone. I read until I felt sick. Then I put the phone back exactly where I found it and went out to the garage and sat in my car and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. I thought about my boys. That's the thing nobody tells you when you're sitting in that moment. You're heartbreaking. It's not just your marriage you're grieving. It's the version of family you thought you had. It's Mason's face and Noah's dinosaurs and the breakfast table and the backyard and all of it. All of it changing from one thing into something else entirely with no warning. I called my brother Danny from the car. It was late. He picked up groggy and then went very quiet as I talked. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. When I finished, he said, "What do you need?" Not advice, not outrage, just what do you need? That's the kind of brother he is. I told him I needed to think before I did anything. He said okay. He said he'd answer anytime I called. On the 5th day, I came home from work and the boys were at her sister's for the night, a sleepover arrangement Diane had made earlier in the week. When I walked in and saw she'd set the table for 2 and there was music playing softly and she was making pasta, my first thought was, she doesn't know that I know. She's trying to be a good wife. She's trying. And my second thought, arriving immediately behind the first, was she's been doing this for 8 months, alternating. Loving him and then coming home and lighting candles for me. I sat down at that table. I let her pour me a glass of wine. I watched her talk about the boys' upcoming school pictures and her friend Carla's new apartment. And I sat there and I made a decision in real time. The way you make a decision when you know that the next words out of your mouth are going to permanently alter every single thing. I set my glass down. I said I heard you Tuesday night on the phone with Travis. The room went so quiet. She didn't deny it immediately. That was the thing that hit me hardest, I think. There was no reflexive no, you're wrong, what are you talking about? There was just nothing. For about 3 full seconds she just looked at me, and in those 3 seconds I watched something shift in her face. The performance stopped. And what was underneath it was something I hadn't seen before. Guilt, yes, but also something that looked almost like relief. I don't know what to do with that. I still don't fully. When she finally spoke, she said, "How long have you known?" I told her. She closed her eyes. She said she was sorry. Then she started to cry. Not performative crying. She was trying not to, actually pressing her fingers against her mouth like she was fighting it, which somehow made it worse. I asked her how long. She told me 9 months, not 8. I'd miscounted from the messages. I asked her if she loved him. She took a long time to answer. She said, "I don't know what I feel. I know I never stopped loving you, but something happened and I made terrible choices and I am so." I held my hand up. I didn't want the sentence finished. I got up from the table. I went upstairs. I packed a bag just enough for a week. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I want you to know that. Not because I want credit for it, but because I think a lot of people expect the explosion and I just didn't have it in me. I was past the explosion stage. I was somewhere colder and quieter and more exhausted than explosion. I went and stayed at Danny's. I'm not going to walk you through every conversation that followed because some of it is still too raw and some of it belongs only to me and Diane and no one else. But I'll tell you this much. We went to counseling, both of us, together for a while and separately. Not because either of us was certain about what we wanted, but because we had 2 boys and we owed it to them and ourselves to not blow everything up without first understanding what had actually happened. What I learned in those sessions, and I'll be honest, some of it was hard to hear, was that Diane had been lonely in ways she hadn't known how to name. Not because I was cruel, not because I was absent in the dramatic ways, but the kind of lonely that comes when two people stop really seeing each other. When you get so deep into the machinery of a life, work and kids and bills and schedules that you forget to actually look at each other, actually ask, actually be there in the full present way. I'm not saying that justifies what she did. I want to be very clear about that. What she did was a betrayal, a fundamental one, and for a long time I wasn't sure I could forgive it. I wasn't sure I wanted to. But I also had to be honest with myself about what I'd been giving. Had I been checking in? Had I been asking the hard questions? Had I been so comfortable in the routine of loving her that I'd stopped doing the actual work of it? Those questions didn't come easily to me, but they came. Separated for 3 months, I stayed at Danny's for 2 weeks and then got a small apartment nearby, close enough that Mason and Noah could come on weekends without it being a whole ordeal. Those weekends were some of the most important of my life. Me and my sons making pancakes in a small apartment kitchen, watching movies on a mattress on the floor because I hadn't bought a couch yet, Noah bringing 2 of his dinosaurs so they could visit Dad's. I almost fell apart completely when he said that. But I didn't, because they needed me steady, and I was going to be steady for them if it killed me. Diane cut off all contact with Travis. I don't know if that was entirely her choice or partly the counselor's guidance, and honestly I stopped needing to know the details at some point. What mattered was what she was doing in front of me. I'll tell you where we are now because I know that's what you're wondering. We are not the same. I want to be clear about that too. You don't go through something like this and come out the other side as the same people you were before. We're not. Something was broken and it was put back together and the cracks are still there. I see them sometimes. In quiet moments when she's looking at her phone and something old flickers in me before I talk it down. In moments when she's trying particularly hard and I can't always tell if I'm moved by it or wary of it. But we are trying together. And that choice to try was made with eyes wide open, not out of fear or inertia. We looked at each other, two people who had hurt each other in different ways, and we chose to see if there was still something worth building. I'm not going to tell you it's been easy. It hasn't. I'm not going to tell you I never think about it. I do. Less now than before, but it's still there sometimes at 3 in the morning when I can't sleep. The echo of her voice in that darkened hallway. I miss you too. I think about you all day. But here's what I've learned, and I mean this with everything in me. Trust is not the same as blindness. I was trusting her, yes, but I was also looking away. There's a difference between faith in someone and the willful refusal to pay attention. I paid a very high price for learning that difference. I don't ever want to pay it again. And love, real love, the kind worth fighting for, is not the absence of pain. It's not the perfect unbroken surface of a life that looks right from the outside. It's the decision to stay present even when staying present is the hardest thing you've ever done. To ask the question even when you're afraid of the answer. To actually see the person in front of you instead of the comfortable version of them you've constructed in your mind. I thought I had a marriage. I did. But I also had gotten lazy with it in ways I hadn't examined. That's not a comfortable thing to admit, but it's an honest one. If you're reading this and you feel that low hum of unease I described, that thing your gut is saying that your heart keeps explaining away, I'm not telling you your worst fear is true. Maybe it isn't, but I am telling you to pay attention to it. Have the uncomfortable conversation. Ask the question you've been avoiding. You deserve to know what is real. Your relationship, whatever shape it's in, deserves honesty more than it deserves peace. My boys are good. Mason made the all-star team this year. Noah has moved on from dinosaurs to space. We now have 42 plastic planets and rockets on that windowsill. Life keeps moving. It doesn't wait for you to finish grieving. And sometimes now, on the good nights after the boys are in bed and the house is quiet, Diane and I sit on the back porch. Not every night, not like before, but sometimes. And we talk, actually talk, the way we hadn't for longer than I want to admit. It's different now, quieter in some ways, more careful, more real. I'm not sure yet if that's enough. I'm not sure yet if we're going to make it in the full long-term sense of those words. But I'm here, she's here. And for right now, in this season of our lives, we are choosing that. I don't know what will be 5 years from now, but I know who I am. I know what I'll accept and what I won't. I know the sound of my own gut when it's trying to tell me something, and I won't keep turning the volume down on it. That night in the hallway too, 17 a.m., standing in the dark in my own house, hearing words that rearranged everything. It was the worst moment of my life. It was also, in a way I'm still making sense of, the moment I woke up. And I would rather be awake and hurting than asleep and comfortable in a life that wasn't fully real. That's all I've got. That's the whole thing. Take care of each other, pay attention, ask the questions, and if the ground feels unsteady beneath you, trust that feeling enough to look down.